Donnerom.com.
Space Station Silicon Valley. Originally released for the Nintendo 64 in 1998, the quirky, comical game brought several things to the table. It was so well received, it would later have 2 European versions released for the Game Boy Color and the PlayStation. But these were under the title of Evo's Space Adventure. Evo, of course, referencing the robot whose body pieces you have to recover over the course of the game. The game's storyline, set in year 3000, is centered around a space station amusement park that houses many different animals. It was thought to have been lost forever following its launch in year 2001. The world at the time finds out that it's back and it's hurtling toward Earth at an alarming rate. Its creator, I believe his name was Professor Cheese, was thought to have been lost along with the space station back in 2001. You play as a robot named Evo, and in the beginning you're just a small computer chip that has to, and I'm not kidding, find dead robotic animals to have as a host for you to run around and complete missions in order for you to find all of your robotic parts and defeat the evil brain. Oh yeah, the evil brain. He wants to shrink the Earth. Now let's think about that battle plan for a moment. In a universe where size and speed is only relative to what's around you, how immediately effective would this evil plan even be? I don't know. Perhaps it would mess up the moon to either fly or go away from us. I don't know. Somebody smarter than me can post in the comments below about the ramifications of shrinking the Earth. Back to the game, though. There are 4 zones you go through, and each is a different section of the space station's environments. They get harder as you progress through, and there are unique challenges based on the animals that inhabit that particular area. There's these standard types of environments, kind of a grassy, it's the Midwest type of environment. Then you got your snowy environment. There's a sand kind of a desert level, and so forth. I remember my friends and I picking our favorite zones and claiming those as our sections of the space station, and in some manner thinking we were reflecting our personality in the game, adding our own little feature, if you will. I think the game could have worked in some sort of multiplayer, but it didn't really seem to matter back then. It was 1998, and I was in 5th grade. This idea of playing in a virtual space just wasn't the thing it is today. I know there were PC gaming, and the massive multiplayer games were even apparent then and whatnot, and sure, the Nintendo 64 had 4 controller ports, but let's be honest. At least in our area of the United States, not everyone just had a Nintendo controller to bring over and have ready to play. And we had CRT TVs that may or may not have been the greatest screen to play multiplayer, especially that split screen. And if you had 4 people, forget any sort of vision on those split screens. The 90s and even some into the new millennium were still very much a time where parents would limit you on video games and encouraging you to play something else whenever you had friends over. But really, if you were playing games in this era with your friends, you took turns. Hey, switch on deaths. Hey, no, switch on deaths, man. Sharing was a huge part in this time period of gaming, and sometimes it didn't go over well if you had siblings and arguing over who got to go first. Now, I had an older brother, but he was off to college by the time that the Nintendo 64 was introduced into our household. But I did have a friend whom had a brother close to him in age, and when I would go over and we would play Nintendo 64 together, it sometimes turned out to be a battle on who got first turn. Oftentimes would often be decided with a suggestion from his dad. And God forbid that one person doesn't ever die on their turn, so maybe switch on levels or 30 minutes and then switch. Again, usually this was refereed by some sort of parent. Nowadays, friends can just see if anyone else is online, and you don't really just expect someone to have an extra controller, but you almost expect for your friends to have the entire console at their house, or one of you sends a text message and says, "Hey, do you want to play a game with me?" Growing up with games then was definitely something different. A unique interaction took place whenever 2 people were just playing single-player games. Space Station Silicon Valley, the first game you had that had a cuss word in it, and you flipped out wondering if Mom was going to come into the room when that curse word graced the screen. I remember this like it was yesterday. I was 11 years old. I saw a cuss word in my video game and prayed to God that my mom didn't just happen to be looking over my shoulder. That would have been it. That game would have been taken away like it was some dark secret that I had to keep to myself, or else my parents would think that this was the first step to some path where no redemption was ever given. That next I would start to do drugs and do poorly in every class. Because, to an 11-year-old, that's the worst thing. You ever notice how it's never you'll fail or you'll flunk, but rather you don't want them to say in some disappointing tone that you're doing poorly. Presentation is everything, and Space Station Silicon Valley had presentation nailed down perfectly. Space Station Silicon Valley was definitely a weird game, but it was the right kind of weird. It gave you an environment where you could go a little wild with the imagination and just see what other minds could come up with. I would argue that games like this are even healthy to play. You need that hour to just leave reality for a moment. Sure, Space Station Silicon Valley. After a round, you're ready to start a new day. Or do that math homework. Or listen to Mom tell you to stop cracking your knuckles because it'll give you arthritis one day.